Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 454, and my guest is Dr. Maria Michael. She's a Lakota Diné traditional elder and healer. For over 40 years, Dr. Michael has been respected as a medical intuitive, channel, empath, healer, psychic, and teacher, and has earned 5 advanced degrees. She has worked alongside and for many spiritual leaders in many traditions. She's especially respected for her ability to create sacred spaces for people of all races, cultures, gender, and religious beliefs. I met her through my friends Mary Beth and Philip, and I adore them, and I knew that I would adore Dr. Michael. She's been very helpful with me in keeping me calm before a particular surgical procedure I had to do earlier in the year, and so that was really lovely of her, having not ever even met me. We had a Zoom and got to know each other a little bit, and she's a very calming, exciting presence. I know that seems like an opposite thing, but you'll understand when you hear her speaking. All right, check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out susanruth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors, including the film festivals that the first, my short film, will be playing in or at. I don't know what the proper preposition is there. It's just got into the Seattle International Film Festival. So it's very exciting, which will take place in the middle of May. And it's going to be showing in Cannes in France in the middle of May, and that's really exciting. And it's showing in Indiana at the Indie Film Fest, and that's really exciting. And as well, it's going to be playing at the Chicago Horror Festival. So there'll be links for all those things on susanruth.com. Follow Susan Ruthism on social media and Patreon. You can find my albums on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your music. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening. Be well, be kind, be love. Here we go. Dr. Maria Michael, welcome to Hey Human.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Great to see you as well. I know that others can't see you, but you look incredibly beautiful. You're wearing a prayer shawl, and you've got these gorgeous beads, turquoise, and I can't tell what.
And I'm wearing a Diné scarf. This is the same scarf that brought in World War II Ukrainians and the Diné people together in the trenches, and so we wear this in their honor. There's been a whole cross-referencing between that side of the world and our world, between the code talkers and the Diné fighters in World War II. And so we consider them our relatives. We've been supporting them through this fight.
The Diné and the Ukrainians came together to help fight in World War II.
Mm-hmm. Well, they met in the trenches. And I actually have a story in our own family. On one side of the family, there was a Polish man and a Diné man, and they fought together, and they made each other a promise that if they both made it out, they would name their firstborn a name from the other tradition. So there's a Polish man out there with a Diné name, and there's a Diné man in our family that has a Polish name. So it became that much of because for Diné, it's all about the circle of life. Right? It's all about not only for Diné and Lakota, but in the reservation and the indigenous world. It's that we're all connected. We're all related. And so they kept practicing that through the war. And so there's a real crossing. And so we honor them. In fact, we did a prayer when the Ukrainian war broke out at a Ukrainian church. We went to the Ukrainian liturgy and in English and in Ukrainian, and we brought these scarves from the reservation, and we honored 2 of the grandmas.
Oh, love it.
And took them in.
Would you be considered grandmother?
Yes, according to my license, it says yes. But yes, we're considered a grandma. At Standing Rock, they used to call us grandma.
Yeah.
When we were doing the activist work at Standing Rock. So yeah, we're considered a grandma.
You have several degrees. 5?
5 degrees and half of a second PhD. We have a first PhD and then half of a second. That the spirits rudely interrupted and stopped us.
I want to say before we continue on too far that it might throw people a little bit. You refer to yourself in the we and us. Can you explain that a little bit before we continue?
Sure, that's really a great catch because we forget that we do that because it's so automatic. So in our tradition, we believe that we are related to every living thing and every living being. And so this problem with the I and the ego separates us from not only our own helpers and not only our own relatives, the living beings, the standstill nation, you call them the trees, from Grandmother Earth, from sacred Mini Wichoni, the water of life. And so in that way, when we say we, us, and all, it encompasses all that exists galactically, cosmologically, and all the four-leggeds and the two-leggeds, all the creepy crawlers with and without legs, all the ones that swim in the water, all the winged ones, all the four-leggeds, all the elements of air and light. It helps us to remember creation and that we are part of that circle of life. So thank you for asking us to explain that because it's so automatic to us and people wonder how many of us are coming when it's only just one little grandma. But
I love trees being the standstill nation. I've grew up with a deep adoration of trees and admiration. Still have it to this day. I talk to trees, I hug trees, I love trees.
Us too.
That is absolutely perfect because they feel like people to me.
Well, and we are fashioned after them. If you think about it, we take nourishment from the earth. They take nourishment from the earth, and then they use their gifts to change that feeding from the earth into an elixir in their bodies. Some of them create sap, some of them create maple, depending on each tree is different, right? And so in that way, they take that nurturance and that blessing from Grandmother Earth, and then they put it out through their limbs to the world to help create the oxygen to feed us. Like them, hopefully we are using our hands, our right hand to give out and our left hand to receive. I thought maybe it might be helpful to start with a prayer. The spirits just said that would be something that might be helpful. Is that something you would like?
I would love that.
Tonkashila, grandfathers, Unshi, grandmothers, Unshi Maka, Grandmother Earth, sacred Mini Wichoni, sacred water of life. We ask all those that swim in the water. We ask all the creepy crawlers with and without legs to join us. We ask all the winged ones to join us, all the standstill nation, all the Tonka Ayate, the stone nation, all the Petawaka, the sacred fire that burns within each of us and on all the altars around the globe. We ask all the four-leggeds and the two-leggeds to come together in peace so that you may guide us and help us to find a way in this world to live without war, so that we, as two-leggeds who have been slow learners, because we've not learned how to evolve without it, help us to change this paradigm from one of prayer and greed to one of peace and prayer and love. It is through that place that we have the chance to really recreate the way Grandmother Earth is treated, the way we treat each other, and the way we begin to understand that we're one sacred family of all living beings. Help us to learn to extend our right hand to give to those who are less fortunate. Help us to learn, stand on our left, Creator, and help us learn to receive so that we can walk in balance. And on the days where we are clear in our path and we know the path that we need to walk, we ask that you stand behind us and give us the strength to take that path, because it's not always an easy path. And as you see the dreams that we hope and pray for, we ask that you be the wind beneath our wings so that our dreams can take flight. And on the days when we are tired and we are lost and we are confused and we seem disconnected from creation, whether it be by technology, whether it be by whatever is distracting us, by whatever is happening in the world. We ask that you stand before us and help us follow you for as long as is needed until we have clarity of vision, clarity in our hearts, so that we can find a path and take the right path, the one that is in right relationship to all living beings, and walk that without you. And on the days when we are so weak and so worn out, we ask that you lift us up and carry us for as long as is needed. And we ask that you fill our fountain up with the sacred mini wichoni, that sacred water of life, until we are completely full. And when we can completely rest in your arms, creation, Wakatanka, great mystery, when we are full and you feel we are ready to get back to the earth, we ask you to gently place our feet on the back of Grandmother Earth and let the people come to drink that sacred mini wichoni so that they can have the strength and the love that you want for them, and that you can use us in that way, each and every one of us. And let us also remember to hold back some sacred mini wichoni for ourselves, because many of us are very good at giving, but we forget to take care of ourselves. And without doing that, we cannot keep helping. So we thank you, Tonkashila Unshi, for asking us to do this prayer, because we had invoked already speaking about the Standstill Nation and all these living beings, and they wanted to be included so that they could help us, help all of us two-leggeds, help everyone, help every living being so we can become one sacred family. Aho, Tonkashila Metakyase, we are all related. Aho.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's go back to the beginning of whatever stories you want to tell. I'm curious about what life was like growing up for you, with your gifts and your connection to your people and to the world at large.
The gifts came to us very early. We had a lot of visions of us with a knife in our mouth and being underwater and watching our relatives being killed. So we had a lot of memories of our previous lifetimes. But the gifts came and they actually terrified us, because we would see things in people and then they would get sick. Or we would know things were going to happen in the world and then they would happen. And we, with our lack of knowledge and lack of understanding, we were not raised by people in the indigenous way and world. So it was frightening, because we actually thought we were creating these things. And it took us a long time to begin to understand that we were being communicated with. We knew it. We could hear things. We heard beings say things. We saw things. We had visions. But being raised by people who are non-indigenous was confusing, because we didn't really have people to speak to about that. We had one grandmother who was not of this tradition, but she had the gifts of prophecy and would dream about things that would happen. And so that gave us a small opening to begin to talk about those things. But as she said, we needed to keep those things quiet. And so it wasn't that easy. And for a long time, we ran from the gifts, because they were so powerful and it was so strong. And we felt what we were being asked on some level to do was too much responsibility. So we started off trying to help people, doing things like just helping people on the side. We were a draft counselor during the Vietnam War. And that's when we cut out of high school, and were busy going to different places in cars with people we didn't know and trying to help that way to stop people from being drafted. And it's also where we learned a lot about money and this country and who got to go to the war and who didn't. So the people who could pay for 4Fs or have their papers disappeared, or psychiatrists write letters and had the money to do that, they got out, and we got our math teacher out actually as well. We realized that a lot of the brown and black people were the people that were going out to the wars. And it gave us a real understanding about the government and the paradigm of power and greed from a very young age. But it also showed us something that we also thought in many ways was a blessing, because for us to see that at such a young age, to see that disparagement and the caste system that was built into this Western world. And we got to see women, and we approached them actually and asked them what places they came from for draft counseling. And they looked at us as if we were insane. And they said, no, we're not here for draft counseling. We're here to go to college. And the way we were raised, girls didn't go to college. That was not a place for a girl. Education was not. And so we decided, that's something that we want to do. We are capable of that. When we were young, we were told to be quiet and be barefoot and pregnant. That was our purpose. So we're dating going all the way back. We're a pretty old grandma. Those things were said back then, but not said anymore. And the spirits tried to redirect us several times as we went through school. And we'd have accidents, and we became a hemiplegic. We've had a lot of series of unbelievable accidents in cars, all none caused by us, but nonetheless, our body absorbed the accident, and it's not an accident which part of your body absorbs the accident. Everything is predisposed in the body based on traumas and different things that you've experienced as a child. And the spirits would say, work with us and we'll help you walk. But we were pretty stubborn. We said, no, we can walk on our own. We'll learn how to walk again by ourselves, because we felt that at that time, when we were in our early 20s, that we weren't ready for the responsibility of walking this way. We felt it was too big. It was too frightening to have someone's life in your hands. And what if you weren't empty enough and you made a mistake? And so we chose to keep going to school. We loved it. We worked with special needs children, and we've worked in prisons. We've worked with cocaine and heroin addicts. We like to work with people who, I guess in many ways in this society, were people that were thrown away by the systems.
Did you go after so many different degrees as a way to keep yourself busy from eventually heeding the call that was being called to you?
Well, we also loved learning. I mean, when we were young and wanted to work with special needs people, we began to realize that unless you could get people to trust you, especially people who were different, you would never get them to learn anything. And so it just began opening up degrees in not only special needs. We had a triple master's, then we had a master's in psychology, then we had a PD in psychology, then we had a PhD in psychology. We began to realize that helping understand where people were coming from and working in the trenches with people who'd been in our society thrown away. Like, we worked with young people under the age of 21 who had gone through Rikers and Spofford and had at least 5 felonies. And we were very blessed in that we worked with another psychologist who recruited us. We were the only woman in the entire prison. And we came up with this great idea that we wanted to stop this circle of recidivism. And because we had the training we did all the testing. We didn't know why they were in there. And we said, we'll tell you why they're in here. And we actually created a school. Half of them were dyslexic. Half of them had learning problems. Half of them had major traumas in their lives because they had no mentorship. And in that process, they got to turn their lives around because they began to feel like someone cared about them. They were not just numbers. They were just not statistics. So for us, all that schooling helped us get other skills that would be greatly needed in the work that we were meant to do in this lifetime, because we put ourselves in psychiatric hospitals where people were just put away. We worked in a hospital where young women who were promiscuous were sent up the river in New York, up to Passaic Developmental, and they were put in with nonverbal people with IQs below 30. But after you live with them for 30, 40 years, you're like them. And so we helped deinstitutionalize them and help create halfway houses and teach them skills so they could be in the community and slowly begin to not have to be housed in those kinds of situations. So we think Spirit worked with us in terms of where and how we got educated and how that would help us in terms of helping people on the reservation, because the people on the reservation are also the forgotten people. And so we started working with the forgotten people through Western the world, and then used all that knowledge to then help the forgotten people on the reservations in different ways.
I think a lot of people they don't really consider people on the reservations. They know of it, this thing that exists, but they don't go any further than that. Can you speak to what life on the reservation is like and what some of your work has been with particular reservations that you've worked with?
Sure. We've lived on the Oglala territory, Pine Ridge. We've lived in Lakota territory a couple of times, and it's a really hard life. 30 to 40, sometimes 50% of the people don't have infrastructure for housing, for electricity, for heat, for running water. Right now, during our most recent work on the reservations, we're also a spiritual leader. We're a sun dancer for the last 34 years and leading sun dances, and that's our high holy ceremonies and sweat lodges, and where people need help, we do doctoring at the Tree of Life to help people deal with whatever pains they have. But our work most recently started during the pandemic because the US government did not give the reservations any PPE. So the doctors and the nurses and the EMTs were dying quickly. And actually, there's some pretty horrible stories. But the important thing was, how do we raise money to help them? If they don't have water to wash their hands, how can they stay clean? So we were actually walking up a hill. When we do prayer ceremonies and on the fourth day of someone's passing, we put tobacco in running water. And it's not tobacco like we think of cigarette tobacco. It's tobacco with herbs and other kinds of things with our sacred pipe. And we happened to be going up for one particular holy person's wife who had passed. And I want to say something. A lot of people use the word shaman. And shama means holy person in Mongolia. And so we don't use that word. That's a Western white word that's used, that everybody and his brother and sister become shamans when they go to weekend workshops. It's really a misappropriation of the language. And the holy people, in many of the indigenous languages, there's no word for them because everybody just knows who they are. They know who to go for help for. It's not like it's a title, I guess is the best way to say it. It's considered one part of the spoke of the circle of life and the wheel of life. That's one role. The firekeeper is just as important in the ceremonies. And so when we were going up the hill to place that tobacco, and then got 3 other calls of 3 other people who had passed, when we were up at the top at the waterfall, the spirits told us that we had 4 days to get ready to start a GoFundMe because the Diné people would be hit the worst. And then we started the GoFundMe for the Diné people, and we worked the entire pandemic, going back and forth, bringing supplies. We had 2 brothers who also worked, and we would arrange. No one was allowed on the reservation at the time, but we would sneak in with different license plates, and we knew where to drive, and we called doctors and begged for booties and begged for, the gowns and begged for masks. And we had a lot of people. We just put out the word, and Boulder mask makers helped us, as well as New York City mask makers heard about us, and they started sending masks. And then people started donating sewing machines and cloth from quilting companies, quilting, not companies, organizations. And we didn't know anybody in Colorado at the time, but we just started putting things out there, and it just took hold. And so we spent the next 4 years, we put water tanks, 275-gallon water tanks around the reservation. We raised money to buy trailers for our brothers. And then our brothers, on top of working and helping everyone, they would go and deliver water every day to all these people so they could wash and keep their hands clean and try to fight, the illness and the disease, because they had no protection. Even though they were used as a part of the experiment from Johns Hopkins, before the vaccines came out, they were asked to be volunteers, but they were also told if they didn't volunteer, they could lose their government job. So that doesn't sound like a volunteer job to me. But these are all stories that don't get told outside the reservation. And so we then started helping after every Sundance. We would come home and use our driveway to collect blankets and jackets and boots and books and anything that was needed for women, children, elders, veterans, disabled, crutches, anything that anybody had. And we would rent 15, 20-foot trucks, and we had other people drive them out there. We followed them, and that continued for 4 years while we were living in Colorado.
Indigenous Americans are a huge proportion of veterans.
Yes, it's a big honor. And there are 2 code talkers only left. The third code talker, who we got to meet because of our brother Earl, we actually had fallen down a flight of stairs with a suitcase and wound up cracking something. And we still went out because we had his down jacket, down clothes, 2 pairs of long johns, a wool beanie. His name, we can't repeat his name because in our tradition, we don't use their name after they've passed because we don't want to bring them back. We want them to continue on in their way. But he lived in a shack, a real shack, not something that he deserved to live in, for someone who helped save. He was one of the code talkers. He helped save the war.
So nobody deserves to live in a shack.
Correct. And no one deserves to live with no heat, and no one deserves to live with no electricity and no running water. But it was wonderful to meet him, and we wound up giving him his gifts, and he told us stories, and he would speak in Diné and then other languages he picked up while he was in the war. But he was 102 when we met him. He died at 104. And there are still two code talkers left, and we're glad that not all their faces are back up because the current regime has taken them off, but they're still not on the military site. So as part of this country's need to erase people of color, they're completely not back being visible.
Yeah, that's to me bonkers that they've literally gone through and erased the names of people and airplanes, because the word gay, Enola Gay, it's an airplane. They took that down.
Yeah.
Jackie Robinson.
And it's an important airplane because it's the airplane that dropped the H-bomb.
Of course it's important, but it's got the word gay in its title. It's so ridiculous.
It's very upside down. This regime came because a lot of people in this country did not appreciate the freedom that they had. And so now they have to lose their freedom to understand what freedom really means. People took it for granted. A lot of people in this country are people of privilege. The forgotten people, as we're called, by our own people, because even during the president elections, we were never mentioned. They mentioned the Black people all the time, but they never mentioned the indigenous. It's like we don't exist. And we're in many urban centers, many urban centers, and on the reservations. And a lot of the children leave the reservations because it's not a lot of work. And so part of why when we say we're Dr. Michael to people, it's to help people understand that indigenous people are smart if given the opportunities. Our two nieces are hydrologists who have been working with NASA. One's with NASA and one has been working with Deb Haaland when she was in the Department of Interior, helping to find water for the reservation because our water was cut off by a dam on the Diné reservation. So they've gotten their PhDs from UVM, but they also had a father who made sure that they had the opportunities. A lot of Native people on the reservations are still traumatized from all the boarding schools. And so there's a lot of mistrust of the white nation. But Crazy Horse spoke about all of us coming together at this time. And so it's about keeping that belief alive that we're all related and we're here for a reason to help each other.
You're keeping really busy. You're putting, as they say, your money where your mouth is. Talk about some of the different things you've been doing lately.
We've been given permission to use our gifts to help people in general. So we do an intuitive ceremony, which we charge for because tobacco cannot fill the gas tank and tobacco cannot help pay PG&E. But most of our work is for free because we did all the climate change work in Denver, in Colorado, and we helped Dr. Greta Thunberg at the time when she came in sick. So all that work is free. All our protest work is free. But it's important work because from young, we were chosen as a keeper of the earth. So we are bound to her forever. And we are most grateful for that because she brings us so many awesome gifts and awesome visions and awesome experiences. We need to keep remembering as people that there are miracles happening every day, and those don't get on television. They only put on television sensational news. And there are wonderful things happening. There are people who are doing incredible things, but the part of our work is working individually with people and/or in groups. We used to work a lot in groups, but because of the virus, we stopped doing that because it was too close and it was too dangerous. But the work that we do is we can go into trance and we use our gift of sight to travel through the body. The body's an electrical unit and each cell is like a computer chip and it has information about why we're not healing or what we're predisposed to, what diseases. And we work a lot with cancer patients. We've worked with people who've had transplants. We've worked with people who have lupus. We have worked with people who have ALS. We've worked with people who have, a lot of the people we see are people that Western medicine says, you're done. And then they come to us or find out about us either through the internet, through www.drmariamichael.com, and they read about us. And we've worked in people as far as Dubai and Australia and Africa. It doesn't matter. The spirits don't have to use a plane. They can travel very easily and go anywhere that they want. It's really quite remarkable. But we get to outline and give people a blueprint of what's going on in their body and where they're stuck and what people they have swallowed and what things and what traumas are still impacting them that cause dis-ease in the body. And then they at least have an idea of where to start to do the deeper work. Some of the people choose to do the deeper work with us. Sometimes it's not appropriate. Sometimes we're recommending doctors. In fact, we're going to be meeting a doctor on Sunday who's happening to fly into California, who we worked very extensively for 4 days. She was a graduate of Columbia Presbyterian and Yale, and we helped create a protocol for pre and post vaccine so people would not become long haulers with the spirits. And she was very open to working with them aloud. And before the vaccine, the spirit gave us a whole list of herbs to take so that people could stay safe. So we work in a variety of different ways. We love working individually. It's like watching a flower blossom one petal at a time as people heal. It's such a gift to be a part of that. I can think of one person that it would be an interesting story to hear. She had COPD, she had emphysema, she had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. Her hands were bent, her toes were bent. She went to work like that every day in pain. She was on 14 or 15 medications. She had an inhaler that she used several times a day, and that was the only way she could exist. And her sister actually sent her to us, but for 4 months, she was afraid to call us because she was afraid she was dying and didn't want to hear the truth, didn't want to hear that. I knew we would speak the truth. And eventually she had the courage to call us, and we worked together for 2 years. And we wound up talking to her pulmonologist because he wanted to know where her COPD went and where her emphysema went. It was completely cured. And she had no more fibromyalgia, had no more chronic fatigue. She walks 4 miles a day to this day, and she's completely healed and uses no medication. The body knows how to heal, but you have to give it the right information. And if there's trauma in the body and in the cells like chips, it holds that information so tight because people become split apart. They're sensitive, and part of the emotional part of their bodies get separated from the physical body so they can just continue to keep functioning. And they function, but only half of them. And when you're able to integrate both sides, whatever their children's dysfunction is from their 20s or their 30s or their 40s, we started working with her in her 50s. So she'd been sick a long time. And she healed herself. And it's really possible to do that. We have healed ourselves of brain tumors, all kinds of things. We used to have doctors say, can you just go to medical school? Why do the spirits keep giving you all these incurable things? And we kept saying, because that's how we're learning to do it. And they were like, yeah, but you're giving us all PTSD. And I was like, but that's how it is.
You said something a minute ago that really struck me. You said the people we swallow. What a perfect way to say that. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that fits in the body?
Life is busy and distracting. And when we're in pain, distraction is a gift, we think. But it's not really a gift, because what it does is it puts away our emotions and separates us from feeling the depth and the overwhelm of the emotion, because maybe at that time we don't have the luxury to feel it. We don't have the environment where it's safe enough to feel it. And we need to keep functional, because in this society, that's what's important, staying functional, to keep working, to keep doing. And so what happens is we split apart, and the emotional parts of our body go underneath. Imagine a big boardroom table. There's different ages at different places. And what happens is we swallow the people and the pain associated with those people, and they go into different organs in different places for different reasons. And it's those things that if an organ has 100% energy and 40 or 50% of it is being used to hold on to emotions that can't be dealt with or won't be dealt with, then the organ can only function on a 40, 50, or 60% plane, which means it's not functioning optimally. And eventually it catches up with us and wakes us up as a disease like cancer or AIDS or dialysis or transplants or heart surgery, whatever the illness might be. And so there's ways that we can prevent these things. I mean, there are things that we inherit genetically, all of us, through our family lineages. But there's a difference between genetics and epigenetics. We can have epigenetics and we can actually change things from materializing. For example, in our family, there was a history of gallbladders, and everyone had their gallbladders out on the maternal side, from what we were told. And when we had appendicitis, they wanted to take our appendix out. And we said, no, we need it. God gave it to us. You can't take it out. But they prevailed because it was ready to burst. So we said, okay, we'll let you have it. But we didn't sign any other papers. And when we came out of surgery, they said, we should have taken your gallbladder. And we said, why? They said, well, it's diseased. It needs to come out. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. We're stopping this genetic transmission right now. We're going to start working on this gallbladder because we don't want to pass on bad gallbladders for the next generations. So we can change things epigenetically. Things don't have to manifest. And we're quite old, and we still have our gallbladder.
Do you have children?
Yes, we have two. We have twins. We were very blessed. We have a son and a daughter. They had a hard time coming in. They were born at 2 pounds and came in 3 months early uncooked. Not sure why they wanted to come in that way. But our grandma on the res went to the tree of life and prayed for them in the middle of December and felt the tree raise and said, don't worry, they're going to be okay. But they had a very hard couple of years being on heart and lung machines and having RNs live with us around the clock. But they're great people. They're just great people. We're very blessed.
I understand the path of souls that is walked upon after you die, after you shake off the mortal coil. Is there a belief system that incorporates reincarnation at all, or is that not part of the system?
Absolutely. We come from stardust, and we go back to the Star Nation people. So we're constantly getting calls about people who are dying and helping them through hospice, or helping them, pray for them, doing a 4-day ceremony and helping them go to the Star Nation people. There is absolutely a belief that we come back. And, living on the reservation, it's very hard. People freeze to death every winter. It's, where our dream is to build a library on the Diné reservation. We have 4,500 books, but it's not enough. And it's 28,000 miles wide. And we know that the current regime is going to try to break the treaties because they want the resources. Already caught them trying to dump lithium waste on the Diné reservation in a far corner where nobody was. And so we had a dream about it, and we talked about it with our brothers. And now there's a law that no trucks can go through the reservation because they want to keep dumping. That's why we keep talking about being the forgotten people, because they wouldn't think of dumping it in Washington, D.C. near the White House or near rich people's homes. They think about dumping it where it perhaps won't be seen, just like the original pipeline for Standing Rock. DAPL was originally supposed to go through Bismarck, the capital of North Dakota. And then all of a sudden, it miraculously got changed to go through the water on the reservation, which would also impact 2 million people further on down the road. But as long as it wasn't through Bismarck, it was okay. So it's happening a lot to the reservations all around. Logging and never being paid for the land that's been taken for logging, and they never see the money. The government has been corrupt for a long time with the people. It's just going to get more corrupt. But we need to go through this. We need to go through this to wake up. Some of us don't need to be woken up. Some of us are more awake, but there are many, many more that are not awake. And what's really exciting is watching all these red states, people going to town halls, and there are people being afraid to show up, and other people going and they're screaming and they're angry because they're going to have their rights taken away. They're going to lose Medicaid. They're going to lose Social Security. They're going to lose things that they took for granted.
Right.
Anyone now can be taken off the street. Anyone. You don't even have to be a gang member. It's happening. We've had 20 people from the Diné reservation who were picked up in New Mexico and Arizona we don't know where they are. This happened months and months and months ago when ICE was rounding up people. We know 2 people who have one of the highest clearances you can have in the government It's a couple. It's a friend's daughter and son-in-law. And when they have an Alexa, that Alexa thing, we don't have one. They have one because they like it for music. But if they want to talk, they leave their house to talk. They know how dangerous it is. Just like the smart TVs, just like our computers, everything is two-way.
It's very 1984.
Yes, George Orwell was way before his time.
All the sci-fi writers saw something. They all had their little time machines.
That was the first book we taught. We were given a class to teach English of JD children, kids who were juvenile delinquents, and we were told what's the curriculum. We're just bringing it up because it's a funny story. And they said, there is no curriculum, just keep them in the room. I said, what? That doesn't make any sense. So we got friendly with another English teacher and we taught George Orwell. And we actually had our students attacked using George Orwell techniques, the other class, and we had a whole revolt going and taught about revolution. It was really wonderful. And then we had police officers come into our room to collect children. And we stood at that door and said, you are not allowed in my class. You're not on my roster. And you're not collecting anyone. If you want to talk to them, you have to talk to them after class. And you have to go to the main office. You cannot just pick people up in our room. So we're very used to standing up
the power
from young. But George Orwell, when we taught 9th grade English to those kids, George Orwell was the first book we chose to teach.
What are you working toward in the coming months? What is on your agenda?
We're doing a lot of activism as much as we can. We helped run the Women's March in San Francisco. We were at Tesla last weekend for veterans, because for us, veterans are very, very important warriors. It's really actually criminal in the Western world. In an indigenous world, when a warrior comes back, there are special ceremonies that are done for them to help them release, after killing so many people, to release the trauma of all of that. And they work with them for a long time. That's just not one ceremony. But in the Western world, we go and teach them to be killers, and then we expect them to come back and be normal and just go about life as if nothing has happened. And they're so traumatized. And so many of the veterans are homeless. So many veterans have killed themselves, right? So many veterans are
addiction.
Right. Addiction. And now even being kicked out of the VA because they're closing up the VA with the current Afrikaner, whose name does not deserve to be spoken either. It's all going to fall back on them. It's all going to fall apart, but we have to have patience and we have to keep fighting. It's really important. The protests are really important for all of you who are out there. Not everybody's a protester, and that's okay. There's lots of ways to help. There's lots of ways to pray. There's lots of ways to fight the regime. But protests and being on the streets is really important, not only for the Republicans, but also for the Democrats. We would like to tell people about the 5 calls it's an app you can get on your phone, where they give you the name, you put in your zip code, and all the people who are your senators and congressmen come up with their phone numbers. And you call them every day and flood their office, screaming at them because they're not showing up either. The Democrats are not showing up. So let them all be flooded. Let them all wake up. They are supposed to be there to represent us. And they should all be calling. Maxine Waters is out a lot. Jasmine Crockett's out, and the 2 Connecticut people are out. But a lot of the other people are not out. And they're not fighting vocally. And it's important that people see that that's happening. So I think it's important to pray. We don't realize how many galactic beings are here trying to help. There really are that level of help coming from all over the planet. And Grandmother Earth, there will be a lot of disasters that are coming. So people need to be prepared because she needs to clean herself. And she needs to take care of herself. And there's a lot of prophecies around all of those, but I think, we may not want to.
There's a Hopi prophecy I've heard of that augurs some pretty scary things.
Well, there's a lot of prophecies that has very scary things. It's not an accident that we're in California at this time. Let's just say Creator puts people certain places for certain reasons. It's important to understand that a lot of people in California have built homes where homes should never have been built. But it has a lot to do with power and money and prestige. And we're going to be brought to our knees in many cases where there's going to be volcanoes erupting. There'll be a lot more tornadoes. There'll be earthquakes. There'll be a lot of things that are coming. But we'll all be okay. Grandma needs to take care of herself because we're also abusing her on a regular basis.
Yes.
I want to talk about one story that I think would be very uplifting so that people can understand how the spirit world works with the human world. We were asked to go to 9/11 to the pit to pray. We had done 4 days of walking with the dead with several other spiritual leaders at our house after 9/11 to help walk with the people who were leaving in shock after 9/11, who were stuck in the in-between. And when the spirits asked us to go to 9/11 to work in the pit, everyone thought we were kind of crazy, but that happens to us a lot. And they said, how are you going to get in? It's a crime scene. And I said, I don't know. We don't know. Spirit's going to figure it out. We just have to decide. We've learned, and we're old enough that we've learned that when Spirit says jump, you just ask how high. You don't ask why, you just do it. So we flew from Colorado to New York to go to 9/11. What we didn't know is that they were selling tickets. At a certain point, they had started selling tickets. It was really kind of very bizarre to see, but they were still cleaning up. And so we didn't have a ticket. So we went to the police officer who was there collecting tickets. And he said, do you have a ticket? I said, no, we're here to pray. We're here to do something. And we asked him to just look in our eyes, and we stared at each other and looked very deeply for a long time. And he said, okay. He said, go through. He said, you're here to do big work. And we went with a friend because she couldn't believe we were going to do what we were going to do. And so we went to the head of the National Guard, and we said, we need to speak to the head of the National Guard. And they said, why? I said, because we need to go into the pit to help some people. And they were like, nobody goes into the pit. They're cleaning. There's a lot going on. And I said, well, then we'll sit here and wait. So we sat there, and we were dressed in full regalia. And there was a man, actually was a fire person who came the first time. And he said, you've been here a lot of hours. What are you doing? And why are you standing here? And so we said, because we're going to pray. We're here to pray and we're here to help people who are stuck. And we're going to pray for as long as we need to, because someone's going to take us into the pit at 9/11. And he started laughing and he said, whoever tries to take you into the pit will lose their job. You can't go there. It's against the law. I said, it's okay. We're just going to wait. He said, you could be here for a lot of days. I said, that's okay. We have fasted for 8 days a night without food and water. We can stand here for a long time. We're not afraid. So he left. He came back several hours later and said, you're still here. And we said, yeah, we're here. We were sent here by the spirits. So we're going to wait until the right person comes to take us to where we need to go. A couple of hours later, the same fire person came back to see if we were still there. And he said, what are you still doing here? I said, well, we're going to be here a long time. We're just still praying, and we're praying for the right person to come and take us. He said, you're not going to get in. I said, it's okay. Spirit will find a way. Spirit always finds a way if they want something done. So when he came back the fourth time, we had been there all day. And it was close to, what would you say, sundown, I guess. And he said, if we take you, we could lose our job. I said, we don't want you to lose your job. Don't take us. We'll find someone else. It's okay. Someone will come. And he said, you're so determined to help. I said, well, that's why we were sent here. We're here to help. So he said, if we take you, we have to go back ways. And are you good at running? And can you hide behind people? You're kind of dressed up. I said, no problem. No one will notice us. He said, would you be willing to take the pastor of the church that survived the explosion? Because he's been wanting to pray as well, but he's had no way to go there. I said, no problem. Prayer is prayer. It's only as true as the heart that's saying the prayer. So the more the merrier. I said, no, not the more the merrier. We'll just take a few people. So we wound up running in and out of all different ways, going back alleys. It was very interesting how this fireman took us. His name was Misha. He's a wonderful human being. And we went to a spot where we could overlook the pit at 9/11. And we had brought cedar and sage. And he said, no, don't take anything out. The FBI's in that building. The CIA's in that building. All these buildings, you're on camera. I said, oh, that's okay. We've been on camera before. It's nothing new. I said, we're fine. So we sang and we did a traditional song for all the people who were stuck still there in that pit. And everybody was crying. We were crying. And then the fireman was crying. And then we said to him, we have a message for you. Now we know why it was you that came. There is a father here that wants to speak to you. You helped his daughter. And the fireman fell to the ground. He was in such shock. And then once he got up from the shock and he was sobbing, he said, we want to show you something. And he took us to a very special place where he had helped build an altar of all broken up materials of wood, where this little girl got to put up a picture of her father on this piece of wood and made an altar and wrote to her father how much she loved him because she had lost him in the fire, in the 9/11 fire. And Misha had been the one to make the altar for her. And so this father wanted to thank him for helping his daughter. So we want to leave with that story because that shows how spirit works all the time. This fireman had no idea who we were. We had no idea why we were there. That wasn't the only thing that we did, but that was one thing we could talk about that we did.
So the spirit of the little girl's father, spirit, told you.
Yeah, he was still stuck.
Yeah.
He told us to please tell Misha to thank him for helping his daughter.
Wow.
And then told Misha to tell the little girl and her mother that he was ready to go, that he needed to wait to send that message to let them both know he was okay. But a story like that is so uplifting, as brutal as it was also. It shows that there is a very thin veil between spirit world and human world. And we wanted to leave people with that understanding that everything we do is connected to spirit, everything. And there's always a spirit waiting for us. As you put out your dream, a spirit is waiting to help catch it and help it grow. We are all working on this change of paradigm together, from power and greed to one of peace and prayer and love. And we thought that would be an inspirational story for people to hear, because it's something that doesn't get advertised. And we have a million stories like that. So that's why we say miracles are happening all the time. All the time. But sometimes we just don't get to see them. So it's important for us sometimes when we get to see them and witness them, for us to share them so people can have hope. Do not despair. Do not lose hope. Giving up is the problem. And our newsletter that's going out now, if people want to join our newsletter, we give it out once a month. We also hold an international prayer circle once a month. It used to be every week for 2 years during the pandemic, but then it got to be a little hard to keep that up at that pace for 2.5 years. So now it's once a month, but it happens the first Thursday of every month. If you go on our website, www.drmariamichael.com. You can sign up for free. It's free because prayer is free. And everybody gets a chance to pray so that everybody prays for whatever everybody else needs. And then we send out a newsletter. You can sign up under Contact Us to send a newsletter. There's also a GoFundMe for the reservation. We're going to put in a plug for the reservation. They need money desperately. They need money for chainsaws, for wood cutting. They need money for gas to go drive 100 miles to take wood to elders and veterans that live off, on dirt roads far away from main cities. We're going to be doing if people are interested, we're doing a benefit with a wonderful group called Emma's Revolution, two incredible women activists who have been singing for 20 years, and they're doing a documentary on them as well. We will do a traditional song live for the first time in public. That will be, videotaped, on the camera, because it's time. It's time for everyone to open up and be of service. And so they've asked us to do the land acknowledgement, to do the opening prayer and closing prayer. We're going to give out flyers for the reservation for GoFundMe. And if you look on our website, there's a sign for the GoFundMe as well. It says we have $84,000. That's what we have gone and earned and but it's all gone out. It's all away. And this year we had over 10 people die and freeze to death on the reservation, on one reservation. So we need help. We need help. So visit our website and help someone. Remember, we are all privileged. If you're listening to this, you're privileged. Find a way to help someone who isn't. For those of you who are local, we live in San Rafael. We are looking for someone to donate land so that we can have a sweat lodge, so that everyone can come and pray together, whether they are binary, non-binary, two-spirit, all people. We are all one family. So if you know of people who have land where we could have a sweat lodge, because people need a place to pray. We left ours behind in Colorado, and we miss it greatly. So you are welcome to come pray with us, whoever you are. Help us find the land.
Is it a land that would need to be permanent?
No, it doesn't need to be permanent. It just could be on a farm. We've usually had them on a farm. We used to have one in our backyard, but we had more land at that time. But now we've been using farms and other places, and we have a special thing that was created by a welder who donated it, who was a sun dancer at one time, so that no embers can go out, so that the fire is completely contained in all four corners by this metal structure that was all made from scraps and recycled, because we were all into recycling. And so the fire is kept alive in a teepee style inside that four-cornered box with 4 flues, so no embers can go and catch anything on fire. So we did that in Colorado. It's waiting on that man's land, and it just needs to have someone drive it out. But we can't drive it out because we have nowhere to store it.
Okay, so the call is that if there is someone around San Rafael, California, that has land that this can happen.
Even an hour from here would be great.
And reach out to either myself or to Dr. Michael, and let's make that happen.
That would be heaven. Let's all pray together. Wouldn't that be miraculous? Sometimes we feel when we're praying, people have said in the past, that it feels like the inipi, which is a sweat lodge, is lifting off the ground because it has its own life. It's all made with natural materials. And so it's all a part of the earth. And it's such a wonderful thing to be a part of, to make one from scratch with all different races. It's just so incredible. Let's get it going. We're ready. We are past ready. In the meantime, we are doing ceremonies in Muir Woods. We've been given permission for those who want prayer. And we go to Lemon Tower a lot to do prayer.
I love it. So you do personal help for people, and then you do these group things, and people can find you, drmariamichael.com.
Yes. There are testimonials from doctors, spiritual leaders, all kinds of doctors, all kinds of clients. We have so many more that we haven't put on just because we haven't had the time to put them on. But at least it helps you see, because everybody has a completely different experience, because every human is different.
Right. That's good. Testimonials are good, I think.
So have a peek. There's also interviews on there. We would like a copy of this interview to get it on so that we can add that onto the website. And it's just about having the time to do all this stuff in between all the protests.
Thank you, grandmother.
Thank you so much, Susan, for this opportunity to be with you, to share with you, and to share with your people. And people, feel free to reach us by email. On our website, our email is there. If you have questions or answers, or please get out the word about our work, about getting out on the roads. Boots on the ground is what we call it.
That's right. And I'll put links on heyhumanpodcast.com as well to make it easier in case people don't remember or can't figure out how to get to you. That will be a way also. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you for listening, everyone. Bye. Have a blessed day.
Bye. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.